Okay, welcome to another episode of Creative Outcomes, where we talk all things agency M&A. I am joined today, of course, by Meredith Pickrell and also a special guest, another one of the partners at Upsourced, Ryan Baker. We've got a fun episode today, and in it we're gonna discuss and take down the concept of profit first. And so profit first is probably one of these things, these frameworks you've heard out in the sort of agency zeitgeist around getting to profitability. And let me tell you, there's no shortage of passion around this profit first methodology within the Upsourced office. Quite frankly, most of it pretty negative. And so we wanted to devote some time in this video to talking about why we think this is not a particularly good fit for most of the agencies that we would work with. So with that, before we get into all the reasons why this isn't maybe a good fit, can somebody tell me, Meredith or Baker, what is profit first in the first place? What is this thing?
I'll take that. So Profit First is a book that was written by Mike Michalowicz. So it's this concept that business owners take the profit out of the business before they pay themselves, they pay taxes, they pay expenses. So they look at the money coming in, they take a portion of that as immediately puts that aside for profit, and then uses what's left over to pay themselves and various other things. So how this works is you have revenue. Then you take a percentage of the revenue, put it aside as profit. Then you take another percentage, put it aside as your owner compensation, and then taxes. And then you have this bucket of money left over to pay expenses. Functionally, you set up a lot of different bank accounts and you do these transfers between the various different bank accounts. And the concept is like money is like out of sight, out of mind. So if you're putting it in the account over here, you're not really thinking about it, not really spending it. So the overall idea is if there's less cash available in your operating expense checking account, you're going to spend less on operating expenses.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, totally. And I mean, to be honest with you, it sounds like a lot of family budgeting techniques that I'm aware of. So I get why this was written. And I mean, to some degree, it like makes a little bit of intuitive sense. So I don't know, why is this so bad? I mean, is this meant for a specific audience, or what's the take there, Baker?
Yeah, I think it could certainly be good for a specific kind of business. And I would think about that as a very new business that did not have very sophisticated accounting measures, right? And so, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and when she was first learning to ride a bike, we didn't throw her on the two-wheeler. You put the training wheels on there, and you've got this very rigid structure that keeps you from tilting too far one way or the other way and falling. And that's great when you're learning to ride a bike, but it also has its limitations in terms of how fast can you go? Can you actually learn to ride a bike in the real way? Well, eventually the answer becomes no. But so I think it would certainly be fair to say as starting out, it can be a nice safety net. If you make it maybe in more financial terms, we used to have to get what we called the bingo jar for my grandmother, because she would win money at bingo. And we had to implement kind of a profit first system with her, because she would win $136. And then for weeks, she would buy every single one of her 17 grandchildren anything that they wanted because she wanted bingo. And we started going, hey, Grandma, you wrote a lot of checks that are going to bounce. And so we got her a jar, and it said Grandma's bingo jar. And we made her, put the cash. Put the cash in the jar. And then when you want to use the bingo winnings, you reach your hand in the jar. And when your hand hits the bottom, you got to go win again, basically. Yep. And that's kind of, I think, a good representation of what Profit First can save you from, right? It's allowing you to sort of very specifically visualize how much money you want to take for profit and how much money you want to spend. So it's definitely...
And it prevents you from overspending, just like it prevents Grandma from hitting the bank floor too many times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's discipline, and I get that, right? I mean, there's certainly we've met a number of businesses that can benefit from the concept of discipline, but obviously we feel pretty strongly that there are some downsides to this framework to this sort of artificial discipline for more mature, growing agencies. And so I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about why having training wheels as a teenager or an adult, or why the bingo jar maybe isn't the right answer for a more mature business?
Yeah, definitely. And I think even if we were to roll that bingo analogy forward, maybe one more notch is as businesses grow and expand and become more complicated, it's not as simple as a jar, right? So even the bingo hall was paying grandma in real time on the way out the door, but let's say for instance, a lot of businesses are not getting paid the moment they do the work. If the bingo hall would have started paying grandma net 30, this jar wouldn't have worked as well. Like maybe she could have taken me to Red Lobster because she won 2 weeks ago, but bingo wasn't going to pay her out for 2 more weeks. Well,
Yep.
This profit first system would not have allowed her to take me to Red Lobster. So for that example, that would have bummed me out, right? And if we go back to the business, like there are just a lot of limitations to physically having to see cash in a certain place that once you've once you've even graduated, if you go back to the personal household budget, a budget where you've got, you're tracking your income and expenses, you don't necessarily need to check on the bank account to see it. And then if you do, it could lead you astray, right? You could have a big deposit that's coming in tomorrow. And maybe you've got a decision that you need to make today. And so I think when you get into that situations, now you might be delaying a really important business decision based on looking in your operating account, when in 24 hours you would have made a different decision. And so I think at that point you start to hinder your ability to grow in the way you want to grow. You start to limit the amount of profit that you can make because you're stuck on this number. And so I think just there's a lot of sort of roadblocks that start to come up if you're following this rigid system that you use to get started, that maybe it's time to insert something that represents a little more of the as Hannah would call it, the big girl bike.
Can I also say that it's like a total administrative nightmare to have all of these different bank accounts?
Let's be honest, that's one of the reasons we hate it.
Well, you've got a business owner that's wearing a bunch of different hats and you're transferring money to 15 different, like literally 15 bank accounts at times.
I know, which is totally madness. But and truly that is complete madness. But I also think, Baker, you made a couple of points that I think people underestimate the power of, which is you cap profit for, again, it's like if you can't save yourself from yourself, if you're an undisciplined business owner, then profit first forces you to save money in intentional way. But when you're over the $1 million mark, like that game is over. Like you've either figured that out or you've gone out of business. And then profit first just becomes a governor on your growth, right? Like if you understand that investing $1 today generates $2 or $3 tomorrow because you've done it a bunch of times and you understand the ROI, then there are a number of times that agencies and other businesses might choose to accept a lower gross or net margin in order to grow their top line that they know on a sort of a normalized basis is going to generate appropriate levels of profit. Profit first would never allow you to do that. And that's silly, right? The other thing that profit first does is there is no like magic profit number, right? We have agencies who have good pricing power who are able to earn outsized net margins. And when you sort of arbitrarily say my profit's going to be 20%, for instance, you don't really offer yourself the opportunity to earn more than that, right? Because you've set aside all the other money to spend. And when you do that, you spend it. And so, again, you sort of artificially cap your top line growth and you sometimes artificially cap your bottom line. And that's unnecessary at this stage. So, but I agree. Okay. So then, fine. Profit first makes a lot of sense for a small business, makes increasingly less sense for a larger, more sophisticated business. We've explained all the reasons why. So, I don't know, let's say I am one of those larger, sophisticated businesses. What should I be doing instead? Okay, it's not profit first. Then what is it?
Yeah, so it's kind of like the transition from cash to accrual basis. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. But like once you hit that like 7-figure, like once you're crossing over $1 million, you're no longer just this like bootstrapping business. You've got to be able to make decisions in real time, like Ryan was saying. So introducing the concept of cash is pretty simple. Cash comes in the door, cash goes out the door. That it is what it is. It's there in the bank account. But when we talk about accrual, it's based on when the work is performed and when the expense is incurred. So let's say you have a 12-month project and you receive all of that project money in December, but it's going to last for all of the rest of the year. Well, you're not really you shouldn't be recognizing all of that cash in December. It needs to be spread out over the next 11 months because you're going to have to pay people for that work that's being performed over the next 11 months. So that is essentially accrual basis, recognizing that income and recognize the expense in the month that they were incurred. And that's going to ultimately tell us like how well we're doing as a company. Like if the cash is there, if we're making decisions based off of our accrual basis numbers, then the cash is going to be there. We're going to be able to grow the business.
Yeah. And so then, of course, when you have accrual-based financials, you can actually calculate gross margin and you can calculate all sorts of KPIs that are relevant to whatever the ultimate goals are of your business. And so your two collective points, you're not just making decisions based on chunky cash flow that an agency often sees.
Yeah, and I think we certainly understand like why that can be a little scary or unnerving to someone who it's kind of like taking off in an airplane, right? Like that is scarier than driving because we don't really all the way understand how those work. But like they've been working for a long time, and so at some point you trust it. And accounting is kind of the same way. It's like, well, but how much money do I really have? And it's just because it can't, you would need to be an accountant to know it. Like it isn't just something anybody can do.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're very passionate about it because we spent a lot of years getting really good at it. But I certainly understand why if you're making that shift, there's a trust that has to be built up. In order to trust the accountant that you're working with. And that piece is really important because it can't be perfect just because you hired somebody. Like you want to be working with somebody you trust and can grow with.
Yep. Got it. Okay, cool. All right. Well then, so I guess the punchline here is profit first, not all terrible, not all bad. I'm sure it's very helpful and useful for the right kinds of businesses. However, the vast majority of the agencies that we work with every day, and those certainly that are either on the path or want to visualize themselves on the path to some kind of liquidity event, it's not appropriate. Certainly an acquirer is not going to pick up your balance sheet, see 15 bank accounts, and get a bunch of confidence out of what the system that we've built. So anyways, thanks, Meredith. Thanks, Baker, for helping us break down the sort of really on profit first.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Happy to do it.
All right. Until next time.
See ya.